So once upon a time, a long, long time ago, well, it was actually chapter 8 of our theories textbook to be exact, but I was introduced to a theorist that made me feel at home in my counseling skin. His theoretical concepts and beliefs matched mine so closely that it seemed a little bit uncanny, yet completely validating at the same time. A renowned therapist held similar counseling beliefs as I did. It made me feel less off the mark in how I felt about my personal and counseling philosophies. In fact, as I read the chapter, I got kind of excited. I got that funny feeling that surfaced because I figured I found my theorist, but also I think it's something probably similar to the feeling a bride gets when she tries on the perfect wedding dress. Or that's an overstatement. Perhaps more simply put, our beliefs went hand in hand.
Like a glove?
It was like peas and carrots.
Well, I heart Carl Rogers. And I'm clearly not the only one. I discovered that he actually has his own fan club. And were he still alive, I'm pretty certain he'd probably have his own Twitter and Facebook following as well. Because he has one now anyway. In any case, I just found this stuff online and I figured, hey, I'm really not into sports. Maybe I'll start collecting theorist paraphernalia to wear around. What do you think? So, over the next 10ish minutes, this is what our time looks like together. I'm going to do a brief biography on Carl Rogers so you know a little bit about what the theorist was like, a shakedown on his person centered theory just to give you a recap, touch on the goals and techniques of the theory, as well as my life philosophy and why it matches with Carl Rogers' person centered theory, and finally at the end, we'll have time for the lovely question and answer session. So, a little bit about Carl Rogers. Carl was born in 1902 to a couple of college-educated parents who you could say liked each other a lot. They had a fairly sizely family and lived just outside of Chicago in a farm. But this wasn't like any other farm. It was an 8-bedroom, 5-bathroom house. But aside from those kind of lavish surroundings, they had fairly traditional Midwestern morals, which were instilled in Carl. He studied at the University of Wisconsin and also spent some time studying in China, which I think rocked his world a little bit. He came back and went to the seminary, and while he was there, he figured out that he could help people, and he didn't have to help people under the umbrella of religion. And this kind of started his path to becoming a really good, effective counselor. Carl really paved the way for some of the thinking in psychotherapy. He really emphasized expressing a person's emotions rather than the treatment process. He held many prestigious positions within organizations. He attended workshops with Alfred Adler, and he was even nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. So Carl really, in the Rogers, grand more scheme than of anyone things, else, is Carl's a pretty associated with awesome theories guy. of counseling and psychotherapy that emphasizes emotions. Rogers' person centered counseling was built on strong humanistic base, which says that people are capable and autonomous, with the ability to resolve their difficulties, realize their potential, and change their lives in positive ways. Person centered clinicians seek to build a relationship with clients that will promote deeper self understanding, enable them to become more authentic and actualized, and empower them to use their strengths to flourish. So, just a quick recap of the important theoretical concepts in person centered theory. There's 6 that I feel are important, and to steal a phrase from Jeff, I'm going to try touch on each of them in 30 seconds or less. Person centered theory is humanistic. It feels that people should be viewed holistically, that they also have free will and choice, and because they have free will and choice, they also have to be responsible for them. Additionally, it's phenomenological, and that it feels that every person is unique and individual and has his or her own subjective reality based on their life experiences. Humanism also emphasizes the positive nature of human beings, which far overshadows any emphasis on dysfunction or psychopathology. Human potential and self actualization.
Person-centered theory believes that all people have the right to be seen as an individual, have their own thoughts, and be accepted for themselves. And an important part of human potential is the inclination to move towards self-actualization, which is the ability of a person to maintain and enhance themselves, which Rogers felt to be a driving force in all living things that occurs as a unique experience over a lifespan. He tells this story. I grew up on a farm, and my family would store potatoes in the basement during the winter months. And even though they kept in the cold and dark away from the nourishing earth and the heat of the sun, the potatoes would still sprout roots that would creep across the floor, extending towards the only small window that we had in the basement to receive any sunlight. See, even the potatoes would inherently move toward the light. Conditions of worth. Children's self-concepts are shaped through interactions with important people and the messages they receive from those people. So if children only receive judgmental or critical messages, they start to believe that they're only lovable if they think, feel, or act in ways to meet the needs of others. So person-centered therapy seeks to provide a climate of acceptance free of conditions of worth, as well as counteract any negative messages. Organismic valuing process. I have to admit, I'm kinda turned off by this title. It sounds kinda detached and sciencey to me, and I was never much good at science. But if you can get past the name, it's actually a really neat concept. It's basically just a fancy way of describing a person's very own standard issue evaluating mechanism. Rogers describes this mechanism as a person's innate ability to know what's important to them and what is essential for a more fulfilling life. So people tend to automatically evaluate their experiences on their own and can determine if they're self-actualizing or not. It is that same kind of nagging sense that we have where something in our lives isn't right and we just have to get the motivation to make a change. When people are not following this OVP mechanism and they begin to behave in a manner that they think is expected of them or will please other people, they're considered to be incongruent because the person is not being honest with themselves. Fully functioning person. This is a person that comes to be what is self-aware, authentic, and can respond to situations with congruence and honesty. I've listed some of the characteristics of a fully functioning person up there for you to look through. It's kind of neat. Kind of makes you wonder if you qualify, doesn't it? And our final concept, phenomenological perspective. We touched a little bit on this when we talked about humanism, and it's just that Rogers believed that each person exists at the center of a constantly changing world experience, that we are, in effect, the focus of our own universe. Now that we've reviewed the 6 major theoretical concepts of person-centered theory, let's have a look at Carl Rogers' goals, techniques, and views on treatment. Carl Rogers identified the following 6 conditions as things that need to be present in the client-clinician relationship in order for the client to feel empowered to make a change. Some of the goals of person-centered therapy are to facilitate people's trust and ability to be in the present moment, as well as promote self-awareness, empowerment, optimism, responsibility, congruence, and autonomy. By developing these strengths, it assists people in becoming more aware of the external reality, making better use of their potential, gaining an ability to manage their lives, resolve their concerns, and be more actualized. His approach doesn't focus on the resolution of a specific problem per se, but on developing a fully functioning person. There's 3 really great techniques I'd like to highlight in regards to person-centered therapy. And the first one is Rogers' emphasis on the client-clinician relationship. He says significant positive personality change does not occur except within a relationship, and later states, I launch myself into a relationship. I risk myself. I let myself go into the immediacy. Rogers also believed that 3 core conditions had to be present in order to create a climate in which a person could grow. The first one being empathy, and I know we've all been practicing that. The second one's congruence, and the last one is unconditional positive regard. The third technique is something called non-directive counseling. And this therapy emphasizes the importance of the client taking the lead and being the focus of the treatment process. So Carl Rogers was a listener. He viewed sensitive, accurate, and active listening, really deeply grasping the subjective world of another person and transmitting understanding of that world to enhance a person's own self-awareness as the most powerful force to change. Carl Rogers was described as being the most attentive, careful, and sensitive listener that some people had ever come to know.
So why did I pick Carl Rogers? I think because I felt almost an immediate connection to his theoretical concepts and his kind of personal philosophy when it comes to counseling. I think I was on like the third page of the chapter, and there was a paragraph that was like my life philosophy written out probably more clearly and more concisely than I could have ever written it down myself. But I actually wrote in the margins next to it, "I heart this paragraph." And I knew kind of
So the
then
paragraph
that
reads,
I was already connected
implicit
to his work.
person-centered theory is a strong belief in the dignity and worth of each individual. Practitioners believe that people must be appreciated and accepted for themselves, not shaped to fit a mold. They believe that people have the right to their own thoughts and opinions and should be free to construct their own lives and are fundamentally good and trustworthy. They believe in the human potential, in the inherent tendency of the people to develop in positive ways that enhance and maintain themselves as well as humanity.
I also really appreciated his view on treatment and techniques. All of them are based on human emotions and being respectful to the client and having a relationship with the client. And I really like that piece because I can't really subscribe to a type of theory that's overly techniquey or technical. That's just not my style. And so I really appreciated his kind of three core conditions of empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. I was also really won over in his video with Gloria and just how genuine and authentic. And she basically asked me, or asked him, "Are you going to help me?" And he said, "I'm going to try." And he didn't at all make any pretense to pretend that he knew the answer or what to do in that situation, but he was going to help her figure out the answer. And I really like kind of that non-directive counseling aspect of this, putting the client in control. Because that's when I started here at UND, I did not have that idea at all. That was actually a challenge in one of my other classes for counseling techniques. Dory actually told me, "Holly, you need to be a little bit less like investigative or decisive and let the client do a little bit more of the guiding." And then I had one session with one of our classmates where she kind of talked through the whole situation and came up with her own plan of attack, so to speak. And I was like, holy crap, she's totally right. I don't have to know the answer because that was really an area that resonated with me because I always felt like I needed to be able to fix this other person, which isn't true at all.
So I just want to thank the class for watching my presentation. And if you could join me back in the classroom for a hopefully short question and answer period, emphasis on the short, wink wink. When you've returned, if you could just put a green check mark next to your name, that would be great. Thanks and see you soon.